Hey everybody, it's Brooks here, Senior Pastor, First Baptist Church of the Islands. Hope your day is off to a good start. Thank you for joining me for today's 5 for 5. So we're coming on the heels here of Easter weekend, just 3 great services that God really blessed at our church. I hope you were able to be a part of that, either in person or online, or maybe you watch these videos but you serve in another church. I hope your day was great if that's the case. Well, today I want to talk with you about the topic of what it means to love the Lord, to love Jesus. And, that's something the Bible has an awful lot to speak about. Of course, we're told and commanded to love the Lord our God with all of our heart and soul and mind and strength. And there are a lot of distractions to that, a lot of things that compete for that. But God calls us to love Him that way. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. Today. There's a passage here in Revelation chapter 2, the very last book of the Bible, where Jesus is speaking to a church, the church in the city of Ephesus. And he has a lot of good things to say about this church and to this church. But in the very end, right, he has an issue that he brings to the forefront. And I want you to listen as I read here in Revelation chapter 2, beginning in verse 2. He says to this church in Ephesus, "I know your deeds and your toil and your perseverance, and that you cannot tolerate evil men. You put to the test those who call themselves apostles, and they are not, and you found them to be false. You have perseverance, you have endured for my name's sake, and have not grown weary." And there's a lot of good things that Jesus is pointing out here about this particular church, but there's an issue. And in verse 4, he says, "But I have this against you, that you have left your first love." Jesus doesn't say that they had forgotten their first love, as though he got squeezed out by other distractions or other pursuits. He says that they had left him. It's almost like there was this understanding, right? They knew what they were doing. They were doing all the right things, but they had just walked away from him. And you know what? If we're not careful, there's a tendency for us as believers today to do the same thing, to where we get so busy, sometimes even serving him, that we don't realize that our heart has gotten away from us, that our heart has disengaged from him. It's almost like we're a machine doing all the things. But our heart is just drifting from a deep, abiding love for Jesus. I don't know if that's you today. If it's the case, then he has something to say regarding the remedy. He says in verse 5, "Therefore, remember from where you have fallen." All right, remember, the first word. He says, "and repent." All right, repent, that's the second word. And then he says, "and do the deeds you did at first." Let's just call that return. He says, remember, repent, and return. Remember what it was like when your heart beat so hot, quite hot for him, right? Remember what it was like back then. Remember what it was like to have that joy and that drive to spend time in his word and to pray and to worship and to share your faith. Remember what it was like. Remember those days. Turn, repent from the things that have gotten in the way of that have competed with him. And then he says, ultimately, return. Do what we did at the first, when our hearts were in love with him, right? When we were engaged in worship and we rushed into his presence. Return and do those things again. I think that's a great remedy for us, to remember that there's not an automatic, guarantee that our hearts are always going to be engaged with the Lord. A lot of things come into competition with him, and we have to be intentional to ultimately love him with all that we are. I hope that this has been an encouragement for you today. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as a church and click that bell for notifications so that you can get every single one of these 5 for 5 devotions that come along. Stay tuned for the one tomorrow as well, and hope you have a great rest of the day today. God bless you.